Welcome back to episode 5 of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah, and with me I have Dan.
How you doing?
And I have Jason.
Hello.
So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. We're excited to bring this episode to you, our listeners. Today, our big topic is going to be about building community. And with some breaking news that dropped recently, it's a very keen and very timely topic, wouldn't you say, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Yeah. So before we get started, though, why don't we just talk about any games we're playing? Have you guys played any games recently?
Nothing really new. Just kind of been War Machine for me.
Okay.
I've been sucked into several games.
Oh.
Keyforge is a big one. Lately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty dang popular.
We talked about Keyforge in our last episode briefly, because I played a demo game too.
Very interesting game. Richard Garfield design, a lot of cool stuff, seeing changes after having, for myself, played Magic for way too long. It's a nice breath of fresh air to just be like, oh, let me just throw it in a card game and not feel like I have to buy millions of booster packs.
Well, confession time. How many packs have you purchased?
Well, my girlfriend is usually pretty good about... Shut up. Usually pretty good about telling me once it's around Christmas that I'm not allowed to buy anything.
Oh, very good.
So, only 8?
Oh, wow.
I can...
8.
Well, okay.
Wow.
Come on, she's not going to listen to this. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, it seems less bad when in comparison to some of my buddies who are already past the 20 mark.
Yeah.
So... Makes me feel less bad, but yeah, I know that's a big number still for
I actually ran into an old HeroClix player that I knew from back when I played HeroClix, and he's into Keyforge right now, and I think he's one of the 20 mark guys. Yeah. I think he's at least 20 packs.
It's a little dangerous. It's definitely card games are spooky.
I'm thinking about getting a couple and just putting in the stockings for the boys, and because you're right, Christmas is coming, and it's a nice gift, and so yeah. Well, yeah.
Have you had you've had a chance to play it?
One demo game, I played with Jesse, and I really liked the mechanic. It was pretty clever. So
I like the no obligation to pick up more, but you definitely have the desire to pick up more, right?
Well, it's kind of like, okay, so I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh with Ozzy, and it takes a lot of brain power for me to like figure out what's happening in the game. Because I didn't grow up playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I grew up playing Magic. That was my game, and it made sense to me, But even me, as little as I play, I still want to have a couple different decks to
and that's how they get you,
Ozzy.
right? That's how they get you.
So,
that one doesn't seem to do well against you. Let me try this other one.
So I could see me going getting a couple Keyforge decks, and I feel like playing this one today or whatever.
Yep, you need some variety. That way, they're not knowing what you're going to play all the time, and you get the same match over and over again.
Right. Oh man, yeah. Well, my big thing is my D&D group. We're doing Starfinder right now.
Oh yeah.
And I love. There's some elements about the game that I just love. Like 2 sessions ago, we had this fantastic car chase. The rules were so cleverly written, and there was like excitement and anticipation in that session that you don't normally feel, the same way. And so you had the driver has his the things that he can do, and then the passengers have the things that they can do. And so last night we had our second session, and where we kind of wrapped everything up and saved the day as one does in RPGs. And then my wife and I were playing, what is it? Pandemic Legacy.
How are you liking that one?
Oh, it's so good. We're on season 2.
Yeah.
And it's completely opposite of regular Pandemic. I actually like it better. I think it's harder. We haven't won a session yet. But the way that I think
this game is so fun. I lose all the time. Right?
Well, a couple of us are forgetting our what our roles are, and so we're just not completing the objectives that we need to complete in time, and that's really what it is. But it's sort of a reverse mechanic from regular Pandemic, which is why I like it. I think it's once again, it's clever.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you played Betrayal Legacy.
No. Not yet. It's on the list.
Saw that, yeah.
Been working on it, and it's pretty good so far. I will say that it's got like the nice legacy components where it's like, you're doing stuff, and as you're adding it, you're removing things from the game that seem to really have bad implications for yourself, for your future games. I definitely do dig the legacy mechanic as far as spicing up a game that, like, Betrayal at House on the Hill is like a 10-year-old game or something,
Well,
right?
on its own right,
20-year-old
it's
game.
awesome. You know,
Right.
just regular
Yeah.
Betrayal is awesome. I can't even imagine what'll happen when you put a layer of legacy on top of it.
It's very silly is what it is what it comes down to. I'm not going to spoil anything.
Okay, no
There you go,
spoilers. All right.
I was going to say, what you might want to say when you're playing Pandemic with your wife is, know your role. That might not go so well.
Oh, savage. So no, we played with another couple,
Yeah.
and we did season 1. It took us about a full calendar year to get season 1 done, and now we're on season 2. And it's just nice every once in a while we just have a game night.
Yeah,
and,
you can just pick it up.
you know, and yeah, it's good. So how about any War Machine games, guys?
Well, you know, just the last one we played was our, for the YouTube, Bat Rep.
That's
Little-
right.
we did a
Was
little-
it Caliban?
Yep, Caliban and Bartolo.
Bartolo Colon, like the pitcher.
It's been a couple weeks now since I got my last game in, sadly. But I played Zol 2 with 2 Supreme Guardians against a horrible Assyria? Whatever the floaty Retribution lady is. And she had Hyperion. And I remembered why I really dislike Assyria and the Hyperion, because those pie plates that just putting down and removing immortals. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess I don't need tough.
Yeah.
Overrated.
It's not
Yeah,
even a question.
basically that.
It's kind of fun to see Retribution kind of come back, though.
No, I
It's-
disagree.
Well, I mean,
Oh, the Trident's not even out
Some
yet.
of my early games in War Machine were against my buddy who decided to pick up Retribution, this same buddy, and he was a big fan of the Mage Hunter Strike Force. And I, playing Signar initially, really liked Jax. And Mage Hunter Strike Force basically said that you don't get to play Jax. So,
as a Kato player, I would hate that.
yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not playing Kato anymore, so.
Who cares?
Well, I will be once the Doom Reavers drop, actually.
Yeah.
Full confession.
That's only like
No
one or two
surprise.
jacks. You're okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, we the same day that I played, we filmed our Bat Rep.
Yep.
I played one of my Journeyman League games, and I played against Oz, and so he's actually playing Kador for the Journeyman League, and I'm playing Scorn for the Journeyman League, and let's see what happened. I think I won on scenario in that one, because there's this in week 3 and 4 there's that
You
circular
introduced the-
scenario. Yeah. So that was the only Journeyman League I got in. We went to Runen Board on Wednesday, and there weren't very many Journeyman players there, and so I let Oz play with Harry, and they had a good game.
Good.
And I just stood around waiting, and then by the time the game was over, we went home for dinner. So that's all I got.
You can't see it on the mic, but I'm playing a sad small violin.
Very sad, small violin. Yeah.
I mean, you could
But hey,
set
I
it
got
up
2
here.
games in last week, I guess. So, yeah, so we're actually gearing up for the coming next event. Oz and I are going to play a game tonight, so a full
Nice.
75
Very
pointer.
nice.
So yeah, and we'll talk about that later when we get to the events part. So how about hobby progress? Last episode I talked about the finish a figure challenge, and my figure was the Rhinodon. And I finished it. I just have to paint the arcs or do a line if I want to do that instead. And but I have a done model. I did it.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah.
It looks great. It does legitimately look great.
Thank you.
I came here, and one of the first things Jeremiah did was show off his Rhinodon to me.
I have to.
He just goes over to the shelf and is like, look what I did.
How about you, Dan? Did you finish a figure?
Yeah, so I ended up completing my champs, and then actually did a little bit of work on my Dracodile lava theme I'm doing, and then
So good.
yeah,
I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing that.
right.
Yeah.
And then I finished. Well, I need to just do a little bit of basing, but my Dunian knot. So
Nice.
I did a little bit quicker on them just because they're very limited use. So
Yeah. That's the one where you're doing the brightly colored scheme, right?
Yep.
Like one yellow and one.
yeah, I have 2 of them are like a red yellow, and then
Yeah.
like the leader's a red blue. Mainly because I got sick of painting yellow, so I made the leader blue robed.
It's fair.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, I think, as an opponent.
Yeah.
Who's the okay?
Oh yeah.
So, well, we want to move on to our main topic today, and the main topic is about building community. And one of the things that is unique in games is I think wargaming players, like players who play tabletop war games, tend to approach games and tend to approach community a little bit different than, let's say, just a regular board gamer,
Yeah.
or especially a video gamer. I mean, there's all different kinds of gamers,
Mm-hmm.
but war gamers are kind of their own breed. And Dan and I, we invited Jason to be on our podcast to help talk about that topic. And so before we actually dive into that, I think you're uniquely gifted to help us with that conversation.
Flattery.
And so, of course, this
Just
is how
bald
you get,
face flattery.
This is how you get guests on. You
Well,
can't pay
I do
them,
want to.
so you
I do want to say thank you for inviting me. It is
Yeah.
truly a treat.
Yeah, it's-
Jeremiah is a wonderful person, and Dan
Oh, more
so
flattery.
far seems
Right.
reasonable.
That's the last 15 minutes.
He's been side-eyeing me, just like
Yeah.
giving me like the throat-cutting action there.
So that's how we're sitting, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Give it another hour.
I like how, since no one can see, I can just like forge the narrative however
Right.
I want.
That's true.
Be like, Jeremiah
I'm
is
not even
handing
wearing
me
any
grapes
clothes.
right now.
Yeah. Oh no! Hey.
Sorry. All right. We might edit that out.
Yeah. I thought this was a PG show.
Oh boy. All right.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So Jason, tell us about kind of your gaming history, and tell us the
Sure.
journey and how you got into War Machine, and what factions you played.
Yeah, of
the
course.
whole thing. I just want to know about you.
Okay, so skinny, the short and skinny of it. I played a lot of video games growing up, as I'm sure a lot of people around my age have. I am younger, I guess, for the normal wargaming community. I'm 29. Not necessarily the youngest, kind of middle of the pack, I guess. But I started into wargaming actually before I did board gaming, which I think is a little odd from my experience talking to other people.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what it was. I just started seeing some like cool robot models online, and I saw like it was honestly like the Kador, the Clamjacks.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that thing? And ended up looking into it, but as someone who had never done a hobby war game or a hobby game in general, or even like put models together, it was super intimidating. And I don't remember what it was, but I went to my local game store and I bought the 2-player battle box, the old Mark II Kador versus Protectorate one.
Okay.
And I ended up building it a little bit and hanging out. Now this is kind of like a while ago, but one of the first places that I went to was, I believe it was Nightfall Games over in Beaverton.
area.
And I hung out there, and I think actually one of the first people I met, and this is like a little shout out because I like this guy, Ron, great guy. And I think I met him there, and then there was, for the life of me, I'm horrible with names, as I told you guys beforehand. I think Chris was the guy who owned Nightfall Games.
Yep.
And he got me set up with like, oh, here's how to do painting stuff and some of that stuff there. So nice little entry point there, but I never played until like a year and a half later. And
Okay.
I got one of my roommates to actually take like the Protectorate part, because burning and fire.
Made sense.
And we actually got some games in.
Nice.
From there, it was kind of off and on with War Machine. I ended up getting more into board games, but
Okay.
then eventually D&D, and I run a lot of D&D. I play D&D 3 times a week, which is perhaps too many. But no, shaking your head.
Good.
So far, I don't think so, but sometimes I wonder, because I
No.
run all the games.
I was gonna say, are you running them, or are you
Yeah, every
playing?
single one.
So how do you keep the story straight? That's my question.
It helps when you cheat and run the same story for all of them.
Oh yeah, that's cheating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but don't tell them, okay?
Okay, I won't say anything to your face.
No, they know. But then going back into War Machine, where coincidentally, and this is kind of where I would be going with talking about the community aspect, is a lot of people that I played board games and D&D with, I ended up playing War Machine with.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, like, either I introduced them to the game, or they had heard a little bit about it and just needed that like little bit of like, oh, I do have some stuff.
Yeah.
Let's try playing it, sort of thing.
Everyone has models laying around.
Yeah.
Right.
Pretty much, right? So here I am now, and I own way too much stuff and way too many board games,
Yes.
and have very little time.
Yes. Well, okay. So let's get the list. What factions do you play?
Okay. All right. So I own and play Signar, Scorn, Mercenaries for Cephalix,
Yes.
Gators for Minions. I have Trolls. I don't really play them, but I have Trolls. And then I, partially as gifts and stuff, own and have played a little bit of Kador, Menoth, Retribution, Legion, and Circle. Circle technically belongs to my girlfriend, but I initially bought that army, and then she kind of inherited it and added it to her own collection.
Okay.
So basically, it's easier to say what I don't own.
Yeah. You don't play pigs, though, huh?
No, so I never really dug the aesthetic. I like yeah, you're hurt. You are hurt. I know.
I'm personally offended.
I appreciate the aesthetic as far as like, oh yeah, like the kind of Mad Max crazy guys. I just have always loved gators way more. So that's
fair.
been my division.
Ozzy and I split our we got a minion lot, on eBay or whatever, and I picked up some random pieces to supplement. Ozzy took the gators, and I took the pharaoh. So
Yeah.
Dan plays.
Yeah, I'm up in there a bit too.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got Trolls, the Signar. Recently picked up some Convergence. I got a little bit of Manoth, a little bit of Crix, a little bit of
Crix,
Mercenaries.
I have that too.
There you go. Now you're up to 11, I think.
That's in a box that's separate. I forgot about that one. Oh no.
Oh my.
But like I said, what we play, what we don't, is mainly I have more experience with the Gators as well as what I played a lot this last year. And then
good choice. Man of taste.
right, looking at Trolls this coming year. I've been, kind of dabbling back into Signar too, so we'll see.
Well, if he needs that. Signar Marketplace.
Yeah, there it is, right on. Shout out to Ben there. That's such a clever name, I thought.
It's good.
To be the admin.
Yeah. So we want to talk about what a healthy community looks like.
Yeah.
And we can draw on all of the experiences we have. We're board gamers. We're card gamers. You know what the Magic community is like. And I know what the Yu-Gi-Oh community is like. And but more importantly, I guess we want to talk about just kind of the theme in general, what a healthy community looks like, and then maybe we could talk about it specifically. What a healthy War Machine community looks like, especially in the Pacific Northwest, which is where we are, and that's why we started our podcast, because we wanted to help foster that. So, either one of you guys jump in. What does a healthy community look like? Throw out some ideas.
I'll defer to our guest.
God dang it!
There we go, resident expert.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if we're talking about a healthy community in general, so far what I know, there are a few things, and I've been thinking about this because when Jeremiah invited me onto the show, he's like, I want to talk a little bit about the community stuff, and this was before kind of some of the more dramatic events that have gone on in this past week. I was thinking about it, and I feel like I boiled it down to a few points. One of them is that community, in order to be healthy, really needs to be inviting. Now, it doesn't need to invite everyone because you still want to have a community about a specific thing.
Right.
But it needs to be inviting. And that means that when you have someone who doesn't know what you're doing, or who is curious, or maybe who's like coming back, being really welcoming and honestly helpful is kind of like a no-brainer. But it's surprising how many places you can go. I mean, we've all been to the store, like a store in general, and felt like a deer in the headlights and like, I really need to find something. I kind of don't want to ask. I don't want to bother anyone. And no one helps you. And then you feel kind of excluded. Right. And it can happen at certain game stores, especially where it can get kind of cliquey. Now, all the game stores around Portland so far that I've seen are pretty dang good about avoiding that. But having been other states, there's of course other states, right? But other places, or even for other hobbies, it's a really bad feeling going in someplace and feeling like they don't really want you there.
I want to just highlight that right there. Whenever I travel, I always Google the nearest game store, and I try to go there and try to offer patronage, right? Some, even if it's my home game store at home carries a product, I might, especially if it's a small thing, I can put in my luggage or whatever. But my local game stores, like I love all the game stores in the Portland area, and every time I go in, I feel like I'm hanging out with friends, and I feel like I'm, coming home. But sometimes I've traveled, and I have been in those places where, they I don't think they wanted my money.
Yeah.
They didn't want me there. I don't know.
I mean, it's tough. And it doesn't necessarily help when a lot of game stores, they're kind of like passion, almost a hobby in and of itself, that the person who owns it opened it, right? And it ends up being just a matter of like, it's kind of small, and it feels like this is someone's project rather than like a store where they want to be inviting people in. And that's not necessarily a ding on anyone. And it's really hard to, I'm sure, get a game store going as well as run it. But that inclusiveness is really important.
That's a really good point here. Inviting, and I'm going to add that last word you said, inclusiveness. Making sure that all gamers are welcome.
Yeah,
that's important. What other characteristics make a healthy community?
Well, the other two, and I'll just kind of touch on them quick,
Okay.
and then the other two that I was kind of feeling encapsulated is
Big words today.
yeah, well, I'm trying to be impressive. The other ones that I was thinking is the second would be they need to be flexible in terms of, this one was, when you join a community and say it's like, yeah, they're welcoming and they get you in, but maybe they don't necessarily do exactly the thing that you're interested in. Because when you have a broader community, it tends to be a little bit more scattered. When you have a very narrow community, you end up with a problem of being potentially not inclusive enough, right? So if we're specifically, say we were War Machine gamers that are for the community at, the house at the end of the road on Tuesday nights. That specific one ends up being too specific, right? So being a community that is flexible enough to include more people kind of goes into that first one. And that often means that community members being flexible as well in terms of kind of shifting sometimes what you want to do to accommodate players who, maybe aren't as about whatever the hobby is or whatever the community is about. And then that last one.
I have some good questions about that.
Yeah.
I think.
Right.
But why don't you do your third one?
Yeah,
and
the
maybe
last
we
one
can
is
toss around.
of course goes to but more into the people in general. So far, successful communities that I've seen and like watched or helped, because D&D is a big thing that I kind of help grow in my area, is that it really helps when the people that are in your community are people that you want to do stuff outside that community with. So like if you are a big War Machine gamer, it really helps your community to turn those into people who you just feel like, yeah, I can go get a drink or go to the bar or something, right? Or go have board game nights.
Yeah.
Having stuff outside the mutual hobby certainly helps, because then it avoids turning it into kind of like a job where I go here, I know these people. Yeah, I'll hang out with these people here, but I don't really want to see you outside of work, that sort of thing. And that can sound a little harsh, I think, but usually what it comes down to is making sure that the people in your community are the sort of people that you want to do other things with.
That's a really profound idea, I think. When the whole connecting it to a job, like a job is your workplace is kind of like an isolated thing, right? You only see these people. The only thing that brings you together is that you have the same employer, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's a healthy place to work. And using that same analogy, the only thing that brings you together is a shared hobby, but that doesn't mean that the community is healthy.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Because what can happen is, in for instance, D&D is my community organizational background here, and
Sure.
And what you can see is that people will play with these people that they outright dislike, because they want to play D&D more than they dislike that person.
Yeah.
And that's not in a good place to be for your community, where people are tolerating each other, right?
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah, my D&D group consists of guys I've known for several years, and one of them is a host. He hosts a regular game night in his house, probably 3 or 4 times a year, and it's always open, and anybody can invite anybody, and we always play party games, and then we break out into smaller sessions in different rooms and play more specific games, whatever. But we're also in the D&D group together, and that really brings our bond together. You know what I mean? And so we have a guy in our group who is really struggling with some things, and actually missed last night's session, and and so he was just feeling down, and so so last night I got home and I was like, hey, we missed you, and once you know that,
it's that thing where, again, I guess going back to the sort of businessy relationship, people fall into it. It's not like anyone's fault if a community is only for a thing and then people just kind of go. But it certainly is hallmark of a strong community when someone is having a rough time and someone can reach out and feel comfortable going, like, we missed you, dude. Hope you're doing okay. We're, if you need something, just ask us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, pointing out and something that does like fill the cockles of my heart or whatever the phrase might be is like every once in a while seeing on COG like, oh, someone had this thing, or I can't remember the name. Again, names escape me, but someone had their War Machine stuff stolen out of their car.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a bummer.
And just, right away, it wasn't even like, oh, that sucks. It's like, dude, do you need stuff?
Yeah.
What are you looking for? What was missing? Where was it? How can we help you? Good indicator of things going well, because people jumping in, not just because, oh, that sucks, but because, no, actually we want to get you back in the game sort of thing, right?
Yeah. That was really neat when I saw that. I was going to bring that one up too, is kind of that cool thing where, like you said, everyone's just like jump in and, hey dude, yeah, that sucks, but I got these spare models. I got this. What do you need? And he wasn't even bringing it up like, hey, charity guys. He just was
he
like,
didn't ask. It was it was just offered.
Yeah, he was just like, hey, fair warning, beware of this, and hey, if you see it on a secondary market, here's my color scheme. It's pretty pretty recognizable. Hit me up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like maybe a non-player picked them up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, it got beaten to death as far as the problems with it. But someone looks in the car, thinks it's expensive, like camera equipment or something, and then when they realize it's not, you're not even going to see it at a pawn shop, which sucks, right?
Yeah.
They're just going to go, oh, this is like toys.
It's trash,
right?
Yeah, they don't see the value in it.
Yeah,
and they don't see the effort and the pride it takes.
I mean, because like if you get like your TV or some other electronics stolen, usually if you call cops, you can put out like a, hey, look for these things. It's got
these
this,
right?
And
markers,
they can right. Not going to happen with miniatures.
Yeah.
No.
One of the things too, this third point you said about hanging out outside. When 2 months ago we had our I-5 team championship, and we had teams coming in from all up and down the West Coast. What was a lot of fun was to hear about some of the guys who went out together. They got dinner or whatever, and and making friends with folks in other states. Like I ran into Robbie again this year, who I met at last year's I-5 tournament event, and so that sort of thing I think adds to the flavor of the community. When you feel like you're a part of something that's bigger than something that's kind of smaller.
Yeah.
So, well, those are three great ideas that describe a healthy community. The next couple of questions kind of spiral down the rabbit hole a little bit. What happens when your community takes a hit? And so the first level I want to go down is what happens when someone new comes to the community. Maybe they're a brand new gamer, or maybe they're coming from a different game, and maybe they don't have quite the same positive outlook that you do, or maybe just ethic or as you do, as the community in general does. What happens when that happens? What do you guys think?
I think a lot of things can happen. I mean, you can either get some nice fresh ideas, you can get some new things, or like I said, you could get also some of those guys that oh, this is how we did it back in my group, this is how we did it over here, so we need to do it the same way, even though maybe it doesn't work the same. Maybe it's just the correlation, the D&D example. Well, we don't need some of that guy in our party. Oh, I don't like just running through villages and killing everybody. Well, that's what we always did with my party. Well, our guys don't really like doing that. So I mean,
yeah. There's the, I'm not sure if you guys have heard, the Eternal September effect, right?
No, what is this?
Okay, so I was too young to be alive or really conscious during the actual portion of it, but around like 1990, early 90s, whatever, when Usenet was a thing, there was this community of Usenet users, and every September they get an influx of freshmen who were gaining access to it. And long story short, it's a big influx of new people, and the community was large enough that as they absorbed these new people, either the people, attuned to the rest of the community and kind of aligned with whatever the community was doing, or they left. And then there was like something with the fact that AOL started sending out floppies and CDs like crazy with, the free trials and whatnot.
Yeah.
And suddenly there were way more people constantly than this community could adopt. Now, the idea behind Eternal September is that if you get too many new users or new community members, then you end up diluting what your community can do, or what they focus on, and it can end up shifting and changing. Like a group that suddenly was about, meeting and planting trees or something ends up being, oh yeah, they kind of just hang out at the bar, right? Obviously, a few steps between.
Right.
But the Eternal September effect is something that some communities have to be worried about. Now, it is a perhaps kind of sad fact about wargaming in that it's a niche enough hobby that I don't think that's ever really going to be terribly an issue. However, you still have, when someone joins, like Dan was saying, aligning them with, what do they like and trying to accommodate. Because that's kind of like where the flexibility bit comes in. He's like, you don't want to turn this person away and say, no, the way you're playing is wrong, or the way that you enjoy the game is wrong. But you also kind of want them to be a part of the community that you've already built, right?
That whole influx of large players at a time kind of thing, I feel like in our community that can sort of happen with the advent of Kickstarter. And so, for example, I recently kickstarted The Other Side, and I immediately got hooked on the story. I love the mechanic. I thought the models looked great, or the mock-up models and everything. And so first thing I did was, go out and join the Facebook group when I finally had one and everything. And the Facebook group was not what I was looking for. Yeah. And it was unhealthy for me to
be rough with Facebook
hanging around in there.
Right.
And so, but I think there were some people who were earnestly trying to give the game a shot, and I think there were some people who were just trying to just take shots at the game. Yep. But it's a brand new game. There's no normal yet for what does the community look like. These are the kind of gamers we want to be, And I think they just caused a lot of stress for me. I was like, I don't want to read these comments because I want to like the game that I supported.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, part of it is definitely trying to stem the tide of negativity because it can spiral pretty fast, especially like on Facebook. I don't know what it is about Facebook, but most communities on there tend to, unless they have really hard moderation, it tends to get pretty bad.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. When you're online, you're just a guy behind a keyboard. I mean, Facebook, maybe you have a name there, but what are the chances, that guy's in New Jersey, that guy's in Oregon, oh yeah, hey, we're actually going to meet. Never. So you can kind of, yeah, exactly. You can kind of be a little more boisterous or troll, Yeah.
Well, let's dig a little deeper on this. We're talking about, what happens when your community takes a hit. What happens when someone important moves away, or maybe someone in your D&D group, quits and stops playing, maybe I'm not level 2, but earlier this year, a couple prominent War Machine players, one guy moved, I think, to Oklahoma, and one guy just kind of stopped playing the game.
Kind of just drop off face of it.
Just drop off the face. What does that do for the community? And I feel like the community takes a hit a little bit there too. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely a lag, right? You can, especially if they're a voice in it or run some events or something like that. It can be a very, very big hit that someone has to fill that void, and who kind of fills that void. I know back in HeroClix, Jeremiah was like the main guy running things, and then had to back off for reasons, and it creates this void of okay, who's going to step up next, sort of deal, and run it, and does it kind of go the same? Does it not?
Yeah, the league that I started, I ran it for 2 years, and then there was after I stepped down, there were a couple guys that kind of took over, and then ultimately one of those guys has continued, and actually the league is still running,
Yeah.
and he has a podcast now. So
Oh, that's nice.
It's kind of cool.
Nice.
It feels good. You know what I mean? And so shout out to Jeff if you're listening. And so but when someone who you're used to seeing regularly at the game store, or someone who you're used to seeing regularly post in the chat, and all of a sudden you just don't see them anymore, what does that do for the community?
So, I think it really depends on how the community is health-wise. If you look at it kind of like an animal or something. I'm gonna get real weird with this analogy, apparently.
Hey, we have a rabbit, so
yeah, named Goat.
Yeah.
Goat is a fantastic rabbit for anyone who was ever doubting it. So I think it depends on the health of the community, because if a community is healthy and they have reached this critical mass, what I've noticed is that there tends to be a critical mass. It depends on the community, but where stuff happens and it can still go on, still be no problem. Yeah. But if the community is kind of flagging or having issues, or depending on the person who leaves, it can really shrink or cause a problem with it.
Yeah.
With D&D communities, or other board gaming ones, general ones where you have a bunch of people actually hanging out, right? We're not talking necessarily like a community on Facebook or anything, but where you have people who need to meet and be organized and things, like Jeremiah's saying with the league. Some people are glue. And when you lose a person who's glue, people kind of just drift.
Yeah.
And it's up to someone else to try and step up and become the glue, or to just kind of let things happen. If you're at that critical mass, it's fine if you lose, one person who's kind of holding a few things together, because you've got other people who are still involved and, invested.
Yeah.
And it's not that the people who drift can't be invested in it or aren't because they drift. It's just that, some people have a certain force of charisma to get people to want to show up to stuff, in addition to the fact that they like their hobby, right?
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it, leaving your house and playing with other people sometimes can feel like, I'm going out there just so that I can play my game, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily because you want to leave the house, right? And Jeremiah had said something earlier where it's going to someplace and it feels like home. That's really a good marker of okay, this community hit a critical mass of feeling like people are comfortable coming here, rather than feeling like, man, I got to drag myself out to there and I'm obligated to do it.
Yeah.
When you have someone who is new or fresh and they leave, it's a bit of a bummer, because you hope that it's not because you insulted them or anything like that, but maybe that it's circumstances or life rather than the community driving them away.
Yeah.
And same goes for when it's large people. Hopefully it's not the community or stress from trying to glue the community together. It's that life just kind of pulls them away. In any case, when it does happen, it really is a test for the rest of the community to kind of step up. You're can it handle this? Who's gonna take over some of the responsibilities? It of course depends, but in our scenario with the Northwest War Machine community, when you have some of these people who are bigger forces of they're really engaged with people.
Yeah.
I know Jeremiah was saying that David Kwan, right?
Yeah, David Kwan.
Super great guy, right?
Yeah.
And when he's gone, it's you really feel it. And hopefully you have someone, and in this instance, I'm going to be flattering you guys 100%. You have people who eventually step up, like Jeremiah and Dan here, and help provide something else that makes it feel more like home again, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And I want to shout out to Ben and James and Chad who are running events, and
100, yes.
And I mean that really helps. I mean, James does a monthly steamroller, on Sundays, which are difficult for me to attend to, and and Ben's running quarterlies and all kinds of things.
Chad works himself to the bone. That guy. Yeah. Chad, you deserve another shout out.
Yeah,
I haven't seen you in ages, Chad, but I miss you, buddy.
Oh, there it is. And so, I mean, I think I think as a community, we have a lot of community leaders who are stepping in and helping, and I think that maybe is a good marker of health. What's interesting is that you know, this idea of a community member leaving is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg, though, because we just had some breaking news on Friday, and then now this morning we learned that Will Pagani, who is the lead CID developer for War Machine and Hordes, an employee of Privateer Press, pretty prominent employee, and then also now Will Schick, who is the director of business and brand, who apparently also wears a lot of other hats in the company as well. Both of them are stepping down, and if you were to just briefly read the chat this morning, it almost felt like the sky was falling.
It's tough.
That's a big hit on the community when we don't know stuff.
Yeah, and Privateer Press is notorious about, well, I suppose most businesses would be in general, but Privateer Press is notorious about kind of keeping things in the dark. There was a huge, now I'm not sure if you guys have played Monster Apocalypse or anything, but there was a huge Monster Apocalypse community initially. It just recently got re-released, and people are excited.
And the new models look great.
I've purchased a bunch of stuff already.
Have you?
Yeah, surprise.
I have a wish list.
It had a big community around it, and there was like a whole bunch of stuff. Apparently there's going to be like a movie or anything. I wasn't playing during the first gen or anything. And then it kind of just died, and Privateer Press was real quiet about it. And it might have been because of like legal ramifications, they can't say anything, etc. But stuff like this, when it's quiet, it ends up being dangerous to a community, because when people speculate is when it starts to get kind of, it's like the reverse of hype. It's like a doom train, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've heard that from somewhere like on the COG chat or something.
Take a ride on the doom train.
But it's tough, and it's certainly easy to gossip about, like why or what may be happening. But it is a hit. It is a big hit, and it's like a 1-2 punch against War Machine communities in general, because they're not going to say anything. And so, as players of this game that I assume most all of us really love and have been a part of for more than just a little while, it stings, and it's definitely a
before we go to John too far. That Monpac. When I lived in kind of the Clackamas area, I used to frequent the downtown downtown Milwaukee TFA, and a block and a half over, a brand new card game store opened up, and so of course I got to go to the game store, right? And like the premier game that he was kind of pushing, that he was doing a lot of demos for, was the old version of Monpac, and it looked terribly exciting to me at the time, but at that time I wasn't as ambitious with my hobby goals and branching out. I was already playing a collectible miniature game and HeroClix and whatever, and I think about how very quickly that store just ceased to exist, and I'm not, it's corollary and not causa. I can't say that because Monpac discontinued and was unsupported that store happened that bad, but there's an interesting way that companies can help with the community aspect of their customer base, with just the way they communicate information. So, and of course we're recording here on Monday morning, and as of now we haven't heard anything from Privateer Press about the leaving of the Wills.
I don't expect that. We will hear anything, but
No, like I said, it's one of those interesting things where a lot of people have said too. It's like, I'm sure there's that non-compete compete clause, and like you can't just go publicly speak out. I'm personally hoping for like a Dub Squared Gaming, double Wills. If they use that, come on, give me some credit.
Nope.
I'm sure they listen to us.
Oh, I'm sure. We'll send this right to their email. Oh, wait, I don't know what their email is now. So,
Well,
Yeah.
they're still here for like a week.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. There's still a chance then. But like you said, especially with Pagani being like the lead CID guy, and that really driving a lot of the community
Poor
up,
Scorn
and
players.
I mean, straight. Well, hey, maybe the Scorn CID did just like work him too hard. He just said, I want to nerf that Derp Turtle, and he got told no, and so he's just out.
Honestly, I think Pagani was more on the side of like buffing Scorn
Oh, right.
with like Makeda 3 and being like, oh yeah, we want to do this for Makeda 3 and do all this extra stuff, and getting like told, no, Scorn can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a so I think this news is fresh, and I think the community is processing. I did a bad thing this morning, and I made a joke that we'll start to see cheap armies for sale.
Oh.
And I say it's a bad joke because while there may be some people who think now is the time to get out, I really hope that people don't. I still feel fresh, and I still feel really good about the game. I mean, Ozzy is all about it. He's already talking about what he wants his next army to be, and and he's planning for the future of the game, and I'm planning for the future of the game. This is, it definitely. I play a lot of different games, but this one fits a niche for me that is really sweet.
Yeah. It is. I think a lot of us would be real bummed out because, having come from a bunch of Magic the Gathering and being a pretty big stickler for like tight rule sets, nothing quite scratches the itch as far as like having a game that really feels like what you do can matter as well as like screw you over.
Yeah.
Right.
And that there is for the most part, a pretty good effort to make things cohesive, right? Having played, now I know Jeremiah, you love Frostgrave, right?
I love Frostgrave.
Oh my God.
So good.
Well,
I got new miniatures coming for that, by the way.
we and a bunch of buddies and coworkers of I had done a Frostgrave League, and I was so frustrated playing that game.
Oh.
I was so upset playing.
That's because I wasn't in it.
Well, not because the people.
Ego.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm a bad human.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Tell us.
You are not the opposite of a bad human.
Why are you frustrated by him?
It's just, there's a lot of stuff on there that isn't clear. And some things, some spells, man, there's like a telekinesis spell in that game, and that telekinesis spell was busted.
Yeah, it was.
And it felt like it was easy to make a wrong choice when you don't know how good a spell is in this, it's a little miniature skirmish game, right? And you're trying to gather treasure or kill your opponents. It felt like you didn't know, you had like a very bad way, or you didn't really have a good way of evaluating whether or not something would work out because of how useful it could actually turn out, on top of the fact that dice rolls could be real swingy.
Yeah.
So I love the concept of Frostgrave.
Yeah.
But I am...
Did you ever play with any of the expansions?
I did. I only
Okay.
played with the first one,
Okay.
and which was like the Lich, the Necromancer one or something.
I really want to play the second iteration, the Archipelago.
Yeah.
That's more pirate themed, so I can use some of my War Machine miniatures for it, and I bet it would challenge Company of Iron as a skirmish game for me.
Yeah.
Well, that I think leads back into kind of what you were asking is like, well, looking towards the future. What's nice about a physical hobby, unlike something that's run by like a server online or something, is that they can't take your models away, right?
That's right.
Like no one's going to come in, beat your door down and say, oh, this game's gone. It's gone, right? So even people who HeroClix is pretty quiet as far as their releases, or some of these other games like Netrunner is a good one to bring up, I guess. Fantasy Flight lost the rights to it, and people have been buying it up like crazy because now that it's done, it's a weird effect where people want to play it because they don't have to keep up with it. And games certainly can survive without any input from publisher, and communities can grow around it. There's certainly a bunch of examples for online communities where it's like, before World of Warcraft had vanilla servers that they were going to run, people in the community said, we just want to run this, and obviously legal issues aside, got that going, right?
Well, and Ninth Age.
Yeah, exactly. That's
people
another
didn't want to
example,
play Age of Sigmar. They wanted to still play
They don't,
Fantasy Battle.
right?
Yeah.
So War Machine, I think going forward, worst case is that you have your stuff and you can play with people who also still have their stuff and still love the game.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us are going to lose a love for War Machine like overnight. Now, there might be things that go, I need to take a break from it, and I've done that, right? But you can always come back to it because it's not like they expire or go away.
Yeah.
But that's worst case. I think what we're probably going to see is just needing to really kind of double down on keeping people interested and making sure that the focus is on people having fun, because at the end of the day, we're playing a game, right? With little things that we put together and put paint on and spent hours and hours trying to figure out, what do I want to put on my list, etc. But at the end of the game, it's a game that we're trying to play with people that we enjoy being with.
Yeah.
And as long as you got that, even if the community kind of shrinks on it, you can still lean on having these experiences or relationships with people, and maybe come back to it, and maybe something happens, and maybe the community booms again because something else happens with Privateer Press as a company, right? We don't know. It's hard to say. I think trying to enjoy it is the way forward still, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about just kind of the average person, Dan, you and me, just Jason, just average gamers, right? And it's a game we enjoy. What do you think the way forward for them is? How can we still want to help build community, and so what can we do for that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, as far as some of that goes, it's just, like I said, keeping kind of the supportive aspect of it. Like you said, it's very easy to go down the negative, especially just in the Privateer Press. The mystery boxes lately, right? Let's, clearing out a bunch of old inventory kind of always
speculation.
It makes you wonder. Then this happens, and then some people leave, and you can really go down a dark way. Whereas, maybe it's a positive thing. Maybe something's going on, and hey, we're getting some cheaper models, of just clearing out old stuff because they need to shrink a warehouse or focus on new stuff, right?
I love that in the COG chat. Since when I got here, I did not know about Will Schick having put his announcement in. So I caught up on the COG chat real quick, and I love that Greg was our nice voice of reason catching up on it. And that's, I think, a thing that you also really need is that I don't want the community to go into like a death spiral of we gotta fire sale and get out of it. So tempering your expectations. Now, being hopeful is certainly going to be more pleasant than fretting about it. Because I will admit, I love this game, and after hearing I heard a little bit more about like the supply side of what happened with like the Mark III launch and how there was like a lot of issues with it. And I got super worried because I love this game and I've invested a bunch of friendships and gained friendships from it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to go away.
Yeah.
But being more hopeful towards it and tempering your hope, I think is what is going to be most helpful. It's not necessarily going to be the most accurate, but I think it's going to be most helpful. Right.
I want to go back to the second, I think it was the first point that you made about describing a healthy community, and I think even now, as important as ever has been to be inviting into our community, to invite people to play games, to have models on the table, and someone comes in and says, "What's this?" and you say, "Hey, it's a great game. Why don't I teach you a thing or two about it?" or people going in and just painting, and like Perry, I think paints like every Wednesday, and so people coming in, and I hope I hope things like that continue. I hope that James and Ben still get events going, and keep them coming, and Chad has a event coming up too, and so it's like I hope those things continue to happen, and I'd love to see new players play, as well. Any kind of closing thoughts before we kind of leave our main topic?
No, I'm good.
You kind of said
yeah.
I think it's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. So. I feel like it's going to be talked about for a while, especially since we're going into holiday season, and there's a lot of us who are going to be having more time to play. Maybe not. Maybe less time because of the holidays actually for that reason. But yeah, I think good.
Yeah. Recommendation to anyone who's looking for a roommate: you should find one who plays War Machine.
Honestly, yes.
Yeah. The fact that Ozzy plays now means I can get in a game whenever I want, almost. So he just has to have his own workout first.
A lot of COG members or several people have that long game. They're like, oh, I'll just have a kid.
There it is.
Eventually get them into war games.
So speaking of events, we have a few events coming up. We have the Three Commanders event this Saturday. And Jason, are you competing in that?
I am not. I am terribly slow when it comes to playing.
Oh, very good.
I clock myself all the time.
Yeah, that's all right. That's me too. So, Dan, are you playing?
Yes, I am.
Excellent.
So I'm excited.
You got your team. What's your team name again?
I think we're just pretty much keeping the same as like the I-5 was. Some filthy casuals because three of us that were on that team are playing. So
okay, yeah, and I defected. I'm on the Jer Bears, and then Oz is with Greg and Eli, but I can't remember their team names. So
Gregland, probably.
Gregland. I don't know. I hope they have a good catchy name. But I'm excited for it. I think it's gonna be a big event. It's gonna be a 4-rounder. So there's gonna be a lot of people there. And then I think the next event is going to be the close of the Journeyman League. And that's going to be on December 30th. And then after that, on the following Sunday, the first Sunday of the year, Runenborg, they got the extra space next door.
Yeah, that's exciting, right?
There's light, there's windows, so it's much lighter, the miniature side of things. And they're going to have scramblers all day. And I'm excited about that, just for funsies, because I can come in the afternoon and play a couple scramblers,
right.
And just so I hope people will show for that, and then 8 days later is the start of the Masters League. So any of you guys are going to participate in the Masters League?
You don't understand. I have such bad tournament anxiety.
This is like tournament light.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you should just come practice with scramblers on the 6th.
Yeah, I plan on participating in that as well. Like I said, it's kind of my anniversary tournament. Like I said, I was playing in tournaments, and last year's that was my first foray into it. So it's a nice easy because you're just kind of that one-on-one. You just play in one game. You can just focus on that one game and then move on to the next.
Even for me?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You can do it.
Dan, we didn't celebrate your 1-year anniversary as a War Machine player. Your 1-year birthday. When was that? When did you have to play your first game?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember exactly.
It was like at my house, right?
Yeah, it was at your place because I borrowed your Kador, some of your Kador. We did a 0-point Kador versus Kador.
That's a good way to get them hooked.
Right?
Oh, Kador. Good stats.
Dude,
just trundle forward.
My very first game was at Nexus Games over in Gresham. And I borrowed models from the store owner.
Right.
And it was Kador. It was awesome. I was like, crunch.
Yeah. We also noticed quickly I went, Signar trolls kind of away from
Yeah, that's fine. All right. Well, happy birthday whenever it is.
Thanks.
Happy
being
birthday.
a baby War Machine
yeah.
player. Well, and after the Masters, Spellstorm Miniatures are going to be sponsoring the King of Coins event. And these are rules that we got from Battle Driven, right?
Yes.
And they've given us permission to run our own style here, and so we're trying to figure out how the tokens are going to go, and we're going to connect with the other community leaders to make sure that it fits with with the momentum and where things are going. So. Let's just wrap up with some hobby desk stuff, and I have to announce my next finisher figure model. So what are you guys working on?
I'm still finishing up a few small projects. I like starting things. Finishing is always the hard part. Once I get to if I paint them and I get to the highlighting, shading, that's where I usually kind of slow because that's more. I'm like But I think a Gremlin Swarm is still on my list. I just need to get some decent priming weather in so I can
like today.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully, cross fingers.
And then I think I'll try working on that. Otherwise, it'll be probably a Fenblade UA. We'll see.
Oh, okay, very good. What about you, Jason? What are you working
on? I have a lot of assembling to do.
Oh, very good.
I also am finishing up. I'm not sure if you've seen these D&D HD minis. The fact that they come pre-primed is actually excellent for this weather.
Yes.
It means that I can get a bit of painting in. So doing some of those while I also assemble, because it can get a little bland just putting things together.
Nice, yeah, and you can use those in your next Frostgrave game, because I know you're dying to play that again.
It's a T-Rex. Yeah, I'll use it against you. Yeah.
Just TK. Yeah, I have some assembling to do, because I have to build the Scorn models for the Journeyman League that I'm in, and so I think the next thing I have to build is the Supreme Guardian, and so I'm really excited about that. But for my finish a figure model this time, it's going to be the Warhog, and that's in one of my Scorn lists, and well, I just love pharaohs anyway, so very good. All right, so I think this wraps up episode 5. I want to thank Dan and Jason for. I mean, we dove in pretty deep. We had a good conversation, and I hope that you listeners, I hope that you got some good things to ponder on. And the whole point of our podcast here is just to inspire people to play more. And we want you to engage with us as well. We have a website that we're working on, spellstormminiatures.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, and we have a YouTube page
and a Facebook even.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And so I mean, you can just find us all over, and we want to hear more about what you guys are doing too out there in listener land. So once again, thanks for playing, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Ba ba ba